let's look at how to graph specifically exponential functions on a graphing calculator. As always, I have a ti-84 plus CE, but a lot of what I say will apply to any graphing calculator. So let's go ahead and hit y equals, and let's start with a basic one. Let's start with 2 to the x. So let's hit 2. Again, the little caret is my exponent key, so let's hit caret, and then we'll go ahead and put our x in that exponential position. And then hit graph. And as we can see, there is our basic graph. And as always, we can use that table if I do want to have a few specific values. Again, I like to tell my students it often doesn't hurt to get a few specific values just to help me get 1 or 2 points or to get a better idea of some of the details of this graph. Now, let's say I want to do some transformations to that. Now, I've done a video on general transformations, so I'm not going to necessarily hit the details of that here, but let's go ahead and type a little bit here in front. I'm going to put a little time sign in there just to indicate, to make sure we know those are different. So let's go ahead and keep our base function so we can see it. Now again, I like to put any fraction in parentheses. That's just something I like to do. For here, you will definitely want to put a time sign in if you don't, though, because we need to make sure that the calculator knows that the 2 is the base and that 1/3 is something we're multiplying out in front. So I've got my 1/3. Now, because I have parentheses, though, I don't need to put a time sign. Now, I always tell students, if you want to put the time sign in, you can put the time sign in. It's not going to hurt anything. You don't really need it, though. And then let's get to exponent. Now, with my newer calculator, where you can actually see that exponent, you don't actually need these parentheses. You can just type it in as -x plus 3, or I'm sorry, subtract 3, make sure I have the right problem in there. Just obviously making sure that that -3 is up in the exponential position, and then that the plus 4 is not. Now, I always put parentheses in my problems just so that my students are clear what is in the exponent and what is not. So because I always tell my students to put parentheses where you can see parentheses, I'm going to go ahead and put those parentheses in there as well. Strictly speaking, though, you do not need them. Now, if you have an older calculator where when you hit that exponent key, it shows up as a caret rather than in the exponential position, then you will need to have those parentheses. Because otherwise there's no way to tell the calculator that the -3 goes in the exponent and the 4 does not. So again, you will need the parentheses if you've got that older one. I usually put them in anyway, just to keep things simpler for my students. So I've got it typed in correctly. Let's go ahead and hit graph. So we can see my base graph, and here comes in red my new graph. We can hopefully see how I've changed it. That plus 4, I've gone up 4. The -3, remember, those are backwards from how I think I should be, so I'm technically going right 3. That negative, because it's up with the x, this is a y-axis, and the 1/3 means I am shrinking this, so it does look a little bit fatter. And as always, I can use the table if I would like to get a few specific points. Sometimes it's helpful to have specific points. Last, let's go ahead and just look at that E graph, because that is something we will frequently need to type in. I always tell my students there's technically 3 E's on your calculator. You will see a lowercase e above the division sign. You'll see 2 capital E's above the minus, and over here near ln you'll see a little e to the x. Now this capital E is for scientific notation, so we definitely don't want to use that one. You can technically use either of the lowercase e's. We usually go ahead and use the one above the ln because it comes with an exponent, and at least at this level, pretty much everything we're doing does involve that exponent, so let's go ahead and get that exponent anyway. So let's hit second, ln, and again it comes e with that exponent, so let's just put that x up there, and then hit graph. This will look very similar to that 2 to the x. E is approximately 2.7, so there's not that much of a difference. The biggest difference I'd see is if I hit second table to pull up some values, because all of my y values look like hideous decimals, because of course e is not an easy number. And then from there, if I wanted to graph something else, I could type it as I would normally. Let's do, how about -4 e to the, how about x plus 5 minus, I don't know, 6, doing some random numbers here. So again, let's just type that in as is. Now again, because that's out in front, that is a -4. I am not subtracting from anything. So again, make sure I'm thinking of it correctly. And then second e, again, I always give those parentheses, so I'm going to put them in my calculator, even if strictly speaking I don't need them. But let's make sure to hit right to get out of that exponent. And then that is subtract 6, because that is not a negative number I'm multiplying by. And let's hit graph. So there's my base graph, and here's my new one down here. I've gone down 6, I've gone left 5, I've stretched by 4, and that negative, I've flipped it over the x-axis. But again, as long as you type things in correctly, the calculator should always correctly give you the right graph.